The man in the dust. 24 years later, he broke the silence *** shadows before the fall New York City. September the 10th, 2001, the subway hummed beneath the feet of thousands. Street vendors shouted over the horns of yellow cabs. Above them, the twin sentinels, Tower 1 and Tower 2, glinted beneath the clear blue sky, and no one looked up. No one ever really did. Except one man, Frank Cataldo, 70 years old, stood at the corner of Vesey and West Street, holding a burnt orange folder under his arm. He wore a grey blazer, a pressed white shirt, and shoes too polished for a man his age. But what really stood out, what made people double-take, was the way he looked at those towers, not like a tourist, like someone preparing to enter a burning building. Frank lived in Queens now, in a quiet apartment above a laundromat. Retired. Alone. He rarely came into the city anymore. But that morning, he had a reason. The folder under his arm contained something dangerous, something forgotten, and something someone would kill to keep buried. Frank once worked security at the World Trade Center. But that was years ago, back when the buildings were still new, their steel bones not yet familiar with smoke or fear. He'd seen things. Heard things. People assumed he'd left the job after retirement. But the truth was, Frank left because of what he found. 25 years earlier, in 1976, Frank intercepted a briefcase in a maintenance tunnel beneath Tower 1. It wasn't just a case. It was a mobile command pack. Military-grade encryption. Inside, blueprints, coded documents, and a microcassette labeled Citrine. Frank handed it up the chain. Nothing came of it. Or so he thought. 2 weeks later, his partner, a good man named Morales, died in a boiler explosion only. Morales never worked the boilers. Frank filed a complaint. He received a severance. Check in his mailbox the next morning. He walked away, but he kept the copy of the microcassette, and now, 25 years later, he was about to bring it to someone who might finally listen. T 11:30 a.m. Frank stepped into the glass lobby of Tower 2. The air smelled like polish and ambition. He checked the time. 11:32. He was early. That was good. He wanted to see the floor himself before the meeting. The man he was meeting was younger. A tech journalist. Someone with a reputation for chasing government conspiracies. Frank didn't like the idea of trusting the media, but no one in the police or federal officers would even take his calls. Frank entered the elevator and pressed 7-8 as the floors ticked upward. Frank's eyes flicked to the polished chrome panel above the door. His reflection looked older than he expected. Hollowed out. But his eyes, those were still clear. Memories flooded back, smoke curling through stairwells. An evacuation gone wrong. A locked door on 84. A man in a suit screaming into a phone. The elevators are disabled. Who told you to shut them down? Then, silence. The ding of the elevator snapped him back. Floor 78, the offices were sleek, sterile. A tech firm ran the floor now, one of those venture-backed security startups with money to burn. Frank wasn't here for them. He made his way to the cafe down the hall, sat near the windows facing north, and placed the folder on the table. A man approached 5 minutes later. Early 30s. Slim. Nervous. Frank Cataldo? He asked. Frank nodded. You the guy? I'm Alex. You can call me whatever you want, as long as you brought the tape. Frank slid the folder across the table. Alex opened it slowly. What's Citrine? Whatever it is, it's dangerous. You'll understand once you hear the audio. Alex pulled out a small handheld player. He'd brought batteries, headphones, and an adapter. Not his first rodeo. He hit play. Frank watched. His face carefully. A T first, nothing, then confusion, then dread. Jesus, Alex whispered. You get it now? Alex looked up. This isn't a security threat. It's a black op. This was embedded. 20 years ago. Frank said nothing. Alex's hands trembled. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I did. Outside, the sky remained clear. A perfect blue. Too perfect. Frank stood to leave. You copy that tape. You back it up in 10 places. Don't trust email. Don't use your real name. Alex swallowed. Where will you be? Frank slipped him a card. You don't find me. I'll find you. He exited the floor at 12:06. What neither of them knew, what no one could have known, was that somewhere beneath the towers, deep in the forgotten sublevels of the path tunnels, someone else had listened to that tape long ago, and someone had made sure Citrine never saw daylight. The phone call for the first time in almost 2 decades, Jacob Reinhardt returned to the skyline that haunted his dreams. The plane windows framed a glittering New York sunset, yet his eyes were locked on the rebuilt towers, a symbol of what once was and what could never be again. The past had crept back into his life like a tide he could no longer hold back. A call had come 2 nights ago. A voice he hadn't heard in 24 years. Jacob. It's Detective Luyan. NYPD, retired, like you. Jacob had sat frozen on his back porch in Flagstaff, Arizona, where the mountain winds whispered secrets to the pines. Why now? Jacob had asked, because someone's asking questions and they are not asking nicely. Luyan hadn't elaborated. Just told him to meet at the corner of Warren and Chambers, the same corner where the first body was pulled from the debris 24 years ago. Now, Jacob stood there again. The streets had changed. The people hadn't. He spotted Luyan, shorter than he remembered, rounder, with a tired stiffness in his walk. But his eyes still held that detective sharpness. They didn't shake hands. You sure you wanna open this box again? Luyan asked. I've been sleepwalking since 2001. I think I'm finally awake. Luyan nodded. Let's walk. They made their way down a narrow alley near the rebuilt memorial. The smell of hot dogs and exhaust filled the air. It was almost surreal how normal everything had become. She called herself Amber, Luyan began, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. She said her father died in Tower 2. Said he left something behind. A journal. Jacob's brows furrowed. What kind of journal? The kind that doesn't make sense unless you know the names. What names? Luyan handed over a photo, old, creased. 6 men in FDNY gear. Jacob was one of them. I haven't seen this since. Jesus, since before the towers. One of these guys, Joey Santino. He didn't die in the collapse. Jacob flinched. No. He died saving people. I saw it. No. His body was never found. And now Amber says her father was tracking him before the 9th of November. Says Santino had a side hustle. One that went beyond petty crime. Jacob's blood ran cold. There's more, Luyan added. Amber claims her father kept documents. Names. Financial trails. Even a tape. A tape. A confession. Maybe blackmail. Maybe something bigger. She says someone's been following her ever since she mentioned it online. Jacob sat on a bench. The noise of the city faded behind the roar of memory. Joey Santino, his closest friend in the unit. Brave, loud, dirty joke Joey. Could he have been hiding something? Could he have faked his death? Later that night, in a dusty motel near Canal Street, Jacob stared at the photo again. Each man in the picture had a story, and 3 were now dead. 2 died in the collapse. 1, Rick Delaney, was killed in a hit-and-run in 2003. The case was ruled an accident. But now it reeked of a cover-up. Jacob had always blamed the towers for what he lost. But what if the real danger started long before the steel began to fall? He dialed Amber's number. A young voice answered, cautious. Hello. My name is Jacob Reinhardt. I was with your father the day the towers fell. There was a pause. Then a whisper, I thought you were dead. No. But I think someone wants me to be. She gave him an address in Queens. Come alone, she said. Jacob found her the next morning in a small apartment above a laundromat. She couldn't have been more than 25. Eyes like her father, Paul Andrews. A rookie paramedic Jacob had known briefly in 2001. He remembered him, kind, soft-spoken, always with a camera. Amber held up a flash drive. My dad sent this to me in 2001. Postmarked the day before the towers fell. He told me to hide it. I never knew why until last week, when someone broke in. What's on it? Jacob asked. She shrugged. I haven't dared open it. Jacob plugged the drive into an old laptop. The screen flickered. A video loaded. Grainy. Black and white. Santino stood before the camera, smoking, clearly agitated. They know. They know everything, he said. I thought I could play both sides. I thought. The screen cut to static. Then audio only. They're using the towers. It's not just terrorists. It's money. It's insurance. It's clean slates. They think if they burn it all down, no one will trace what came before. The feed ended. Amber was pale. Jacob sat frozen. What the hell was this? Luyan called minutes later. Delaney's widow just got a letter. Postmarked 2001. Inside, a photo of Joey Santino boarding a private jet. On September 8th. Jacob's voice cracked. So he really did survive. Or someone wants us to believe he did. They were no longer chasing ghosts. They were being pulled into a storm that had been waiting to resurface for 24 years. Jacob realized something else that night. He hadn't come to find peace. He'd come to finish what he started in the dust. The ashes that whisper. The sun hung low over Manhattan as Thomas stepped off the curb and crossed Church Street. Every footfall echoed with memories. 24 years had passed, but his senses remained sharp, haunted, not by age, but by the fragments of a day burned into the very fabric of his soul. He paused outside what was now a sleek memorial site. Names etched into black stone shimmered in the waning light. He ran his fingers across Maria R. Esteban. Her name. The one he couldn't save. And the reason he came back. Thomas had spent years away, vanishing from the world that once called him a hero. But ghosts never rest when truth is buried. And there was still something left unfinished. 3 days earlier, a package arrived at his mailbox in suburban New Jersey. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid photo of Tower 2's 88th floor. A group of people, not official staff. The back of the photo read, "Find the man in the elevator." He knew it wasn't an accident. Thomas stared, heartbeat rising. Someone else knew. Someone survived. He packed a worn duffel, took his father's .38 revolver, and made his way back to the city. He hadn't touched a weapon in over a decade, but instincts were hard to bury. So were secrets. The old elevator operator. His investigation led him to a retirement home in Yonkers. The man from the photo, Gus Navarro, now in his 80s, blind in one eye, with a tremor in both hands. But his voice was steel. They told us there'd be a drill. They told us not to talk. Who? Thomas asked. The security. Contractors. Private. Not NYPD. They had cameras in the elevator shafts. That morning, I saw him pull someone out of the elevator before the first plane hit. He was screaming about a bomb. You saw him? Thomas leaned in. Not clearly, but I heard what they called him. The analyst. Said he was going to blow the whistle on the Saudis. Thomas froze. The man's hands began to tremble violently. 3 days later, they sent people to the home. Asked me what I remembered. I told them nothing. My son had just started at NYU. I wasn't about to lose him. But now, Thomas whispered, now I'm ready to die. The analyst Thomas's next stop was Queens, to a small hardware shop run by a woman named Elena Santori. She had been the receptionist at the firm where the analyst worked before the 9th of November. She remembered the man, Randall Mercer. Brilliant, paranoid, and just weeks before the attacks, terrified. He told me if anything happened to him, to find a file in his locker. Said it would explain everything. Did you? Thomas asked. It was gone the next morning. Who else knew? Only me. And Rakop. His friend. Officer Jensen. NYPD. That name stopped Thomas in his tracks. Jensen. The same cop who took Thomas's own statement back in 2001. The same one who'd patted him on the back and told him to let it go after he saved the 11 people from Tower 1. Where is he now? Thomas asked. Promoted. Lieutenant Jensen. Midtown Precinct South. Midnight interrogation. Thomas waited outside Jensen's apartment at 2 a.m. Rain blanketed the city in a heavy curtain, perfect for ghosts to slip through. When the door opened, Jensen froze. His hair now grey, eyes older, but it was him. The same firm jaw. The same thin smile. Thomas, they said you were done. They said the same about you. He stepped inside. You remember Randall Mercer? Thomas asked. Jensen's smile vanished. Old ghosts, Tom. Best let them sleep. He was going to expose something, and you stopped him. I protected lives. That's what you don't understand. He had info we couldn't let get out. Not before the government knew what to do with it. Thomas pulled out the old revolver. You let thousands die. No, Jensen said. I delayed one death. His. For a little while. You don't know what we were up against. What? We weren't the only ones who knew the towers were targets. But if it became public, chaos, civil war. You think you'd have made it out if panic hit Manhattan before 8:46 a.m.? Thomas's hands trembled. The weight of truth crushed his breath. So you let it happen? No. We managed it. Silence. He didn't shoot him. That wasn't justice. That was rage. Instead, he left, the final file back home. A letter arrived. No. Address inside. A USB. Password protected. The password, M.E.0921, Maria Esteban. Her birthday inside the drive, a video. Dated September 8, 2001. Mercer, in a dim room. If you're watching this, I'm likely dead. The data I found links funding channels to Saudi businessmen, some with ties to the royal family. I've sent this to 5 people. If they all disappear, you'll know. You'll know we were never safe. Thomas stared. Everything he thought he knew, everything he'd buried, was real. He uploaded the file to 4 encrypted archives. Scheduled for release in 1 week. Let the world decide. 1 week later the file went viral. CNN, The Intercept, BBC, new hearings were opened, names whispered in secret halls, now shouted in public courtrooms. Thomas watched from a bench in Central Park. He didn't feel victorious. Only tired. Final scene. A young girl ran past, chasing pigeons, her laughter cut through the noise. Thomas looked up. For a moment, he saw Maria's face in the clouds. Smiling. He had done what he could. He stood, straightened his coat, and walked. Into the autumn wind behind him, the city roared, alive, remembering, and in its whispering echoes, the man in the dust walked on.